Zane thought he knew the truth about God, but one fateful day changed everything. Watch as he recounts his shocking, near-death experience that shattered his beliefs and led him to an unexpected spiritual awakening. My name is Zain Abood, and I'm 27 years old. I grew up in a Muslim family in a small town. We went to the mosque every Friday, and I learned to pray 5 times a day. Islam was a big part of my life, and I thought I knew all about God and what He wanted from us. I was always curious about other religions, but my parents told me that Islam was the only true faith. They said that Christians and Jews had some truth, but their holy books had been changed over time. They taught me that Jesus was a good prophet, but not God's son. I believed what they said because I trusted them and our Imam. As I got older, I started to have some doubts. I wondered why Allah would only speak Arabic if He made all people. And why did He need us to pray in a certain way or face a certain direction? But I pushed these thoughts away. I was afraid of what might happen if I questioned too much. I went to college to study engineering. There I met people from different backgrounds. Some were Christians, some were atheists, and others believed in other religions. At first, I tried to convince them that Islam was the true way. But as I talked to them more, I realized they had good reasons for their beliefs too. One day I met a girl named Sophia. She was really nice and smart, and we became good friends. Sophia was an Orthodox Christian. She told me about her faith, and it was different from what I thought Christianity was like. She talked about Jesus as if He was more than just a prophet. The way she described Him made Him sound, well, divine. I argued with Sophia a lot about religion. I told her that the idea of God having a son didn't make sense. How could God be one and three at the same time? And why would God need to become a man? Couldn't He just forgive sins if He wanted to? Sophia always listened to me patiently and then explained her beliefs. She never got angry or tried to force me to agree with her. The more we talked, the more confused I felt. Some of what Sophia said made sense, but it went against everything I had been taught. I started to read the Bible in secret, curious about what it really said. Some parts were beautiful and touched my heart. Other parts seemed strange or hard to understand. I didn't tell my family about my questions. I was scared they would be disappointed in me or think I was turning away from our faith. But inside I felt torn. I wanted to know the truth, but I didn't know how to find it. One night, I had a dream that shook me up. In the dream, I was standing in front of 2 doors. One door had the crescent moon of Islam on it. The other had a cross. A voice said, "Choose wisely, for your eternal destiny depends on it." I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding. After that dream, I couldn't stop thinking about which religion was true. I prayed to God, not Allah specifically, but to whoever was really out there, to show me the truth. I didn't care anymore what my family or friends would think. I just wanted to know what was real. I started spending more time with Sophia and her Orthodox Christian friends. They invited me to their church, but I was too scared to go. What if someone saw me? What if I was making a big mistake? But I kept asking questions and reading both the Quran and the Bible. The more I learned, the more I realized how little I really knew about both religions. There were good arguments on both sides. I wish there was a way to know for sure which one was right. Then came the day that changed everything. It was just a normal Tuesday. I woke up, went to my classes, and then headed to my part-time job at a local bookstore. I never expected it to be the day I would die, and the day I would finally learn the truth about God. I was restocking shelves in the philosophy section when I felt a sharp pain in my chest. At first, I thought it was just heartburn from the spicy lunch I had eaten, but then the pain got worse, spreading down my left arm. I felt dizzy and short of breath. I tried to call out for help, but no sound came out. The room started to spin, and I collapsed to the floor. The last thing I remember is seeing the concerned face of my coworker, Mia, as she knelt beside me and called 911. Then everything went black. Suddenly, I felt like I was floating. The pain in my chest was gone, and I felt lighter than air. I opened my eyes, but at first I couldn't see anything. It was like being in a dark room. But then, far in the distance, I saw a tiny pinprick of light. The light grew bigger and brighter. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. It wasn't just white, but had all colors mixed in it. I felt drawn to it, like a magnet pulling me closer. As I moved towards the light, I realized I wasn't in my body anymore. I could see myself floating, but it didn't look like my normal body. It was more like a shape made of light. I wasn't scared. Instead, I felt more peaceful than I ever had before. All my worries and fears seemed to melt away. The light was warm and comforting, like being wrapped in a soft blanket. As I got closer to the light, I started to hear music. It wasn't like any music I had heard before. It was more beautiful than anything on earth. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the time. Then I heard a voice. It was the most loving voice I had ever heard. It seemed to speak not just to my ears, but to my very soul. The voice said, "Welcome, Zane. Do not be afraid." I looked around, trying to see who was speaking. That's when I saw him. In the center of the light was a figure so bright I could barely look at him. But I knew who it was. Somehow, deep in my soul, I knew I was looking at Jesus. He didn't look exactly like the pictures I had seen in churches or books. He was more real, more alive. His eyes were full of love and understanding. When I looked into them, I felt like he knew everything about me, all my good deeds and all my sins, and he loved me anyway. I fell to my knees, or what felt like knees in this strange light body. I wanted to hide my face, feeling unworthy to be in his presence. But Jesus reached out his hand and lifted me up. "You have been seeking the truth," he said. "Now, let me show you." Suddenly, we were surrounded by scenes from my life. I saw myself as a little boy, learning to pray in the mosque. I saw my arguments with Sophia about religion. I saw all the times I had doubted and questioned. Jesus said, "I have always been with you, Zane. Even when you didn't know me, I knew you and loved you." I felt overwhelmed by his love. It was bigger and deeper than anything I had ever experienced. I wanted to stay in that love forever. Then Jesus showed me scenes from his life on earth. I saw him healing the sick, teaching people about God's love, and performing miracles. I saw him dying on the cross, and I felt the weight of the world's sins that he carried. "This is why I came," Jesus said, "to bridge the gap between God and humanity, to take the punishment for sin so that you could be forgiven and have a relationship with God." I understood then, in a way I never had before, why God became a man. It wasn't just to teach us or show us how to live. It was to do for us what we could never do for ourselves, to pay the price for our sins and reconcile us to God. Jesus then showed me heaven. It was more beautiful than I could have imagined. There were colors I had never seen before, music more beautiful than any earthly sound, and a sense of perfect peace and joy. I saw people from all nations and times worshiping God together. There was no division, no hatred, just perfect love and unity. I realized that this was what God had intended for humanity all along. Then Jesus showed me something that shocked me. He showed me scenes from Islamic history that I had never learned about. I saw the violence and forced conversions that had spread the religion. I saw the contradictions in the Quran that I had always ignored or explained away. I saw how the Quran's description of Jesus didn't match the reality of who he truly was. The Quran portrayed him as just a prophet, but here he was, clearly divine and the center of everything. Jesus showed me how Islam had misunderstood the nature of God. The strict monotheism I had been taught suddenly seemed limited, unable to capture the full richness of God's nature that I was now witnessing. I saw how the Islamic concept of paradise, with its focus on physical pleasures, paled in comparison to the spiritual joy and fulfillment of true heaven. The descriptions in the Quran seemed almost childish now, unable to capture the profound peace and love I was experiencing. Jesus revealed to me how the Islamic understanding of salvation through good works was fundamentally flawed. I saw how no amount of human effort could bridge the gap between us and a holy God. Only God himself, in the person of Jesus, could do that. I witnessed scenes of Muhammad's life that weren't in the Hadith or Sirah. I saw moments of doubt, of human weakness, that had been carefully edited out of Islamic tradition. I realized that he was just a man, not the perfect example I had been taught to believe. Jesus showed me how the Quran's claims of scientific miracles were actually reinterpretations of vague verses to fit modern knowledge. I saw how early Muslim scholars had understood these verses quite differently, and how the scientific miracles were a recent invention. I was shown the development of Islamic law over the centuries, and how much of what Muslims considered divine law was actually human interpretation, often influenced by the cultural norms of the time. The truth about the compilation of the Quran was revealed to me. I saw the conflicts and political maneuverings that went into creating the standardized text, far from the perfectly preserved divine message I had been taught to believe. Jesus showed me how the concept of abrogation in the Quran, the idea that later revelations superseded earlier ones, was actually a human solution to deal with contradictions in the text. I saw how this concept had been used to justify violence and oppression. I witnessed the true origins of many Islamic practices, seeing how they were adaptations of pre-Islamic Arab customs rather than divine commands. The Kaaba, the rituals of Hajj, even some of the prayers, I saw their pagan roots. The real status of women in early Islam was shown to me, far different from the romanticized version I had been taught. I saw how the religion had often been used to justify the oppression of women, rather than liberating them as I had believed. I was shown the true nature of jihad throughout Islamic history. While I had been taught it was primarily a spiritual struggle, I now saw how it had been used to justify warfare and conquest from the earliest days of Islam. Jesus revealed to me the lives of ex-Muslims throughout history, people who had found the truth and left Islam, often at great personal cost. I saw their struggles, their courage, and the peace they found in embracing the truth. I witnessed the spread of Islam through violence and coercion in many parts of the world, contrasting sharply with the peaceful spread of the true faith through love and persuasion. The paradise I saw was not the one described in the Quran. There were no virgins, no rivers of wine. Instead, there was a profound, all-encompassing love and a deep, eternal communion with God that fulfilled every longing of the human heart. I saw how the Islamic view of Jesus' death was a later development, not original to Muhammad's teachings. I witnessed the crucifixion and resurrection, understanding their crucial importance in a way I never had before. Jesus showed me how the Islamic doctrine of God's absolute predestination of all things, including evil, maligned God's character. I saw instead a God who gave humans genuine free will, respecting their choices while working to bring good out of even the worst situations. I was shown how the Quran's description of the Trinity as Father, Son, and Mary was a misunderstanding, perhaps based on Muhammad's limited exposure to unorthodox Christian sects. The true nature of the Trinity was revealed to me, far more profound and beautiful than anything I had imagined. Jesus revealed to me how the Islamic concept of shirk, associating partners with God, had actually prevented Muslims from understanding the full nature of God's love and his desire for a personal relationship with humans. I saw how the Islamic focus on external obedience and ritual often came at the expense of inner transformation and true holiness. The legalism I had known was contrasted with a faith based on love and grace. Jesus showed me how many of the miracles attributed to Muhammad in later Islamic tradition were actually invented stories, not found in the earliest sources. I saw how these stories developed over time, growing more fantastic with each retelling. I witnessed the true history of the Crusades, seeing both the atrocities committed in the name of Christ, which Jesus clearly condemned, and the defensive nature of many Crusader actions in response to Islamic aggression. The truth about the so-called Golden Age of Islam was revealed to me. I saw how much of the scientific and philosophical advancement of that period came from non-Muslims living under Islamic rule, or from Muslims who were pushing the boundaries of orthodox belief. Jesus showed me how the Islamic doctrine of al-wala wal-bara, loyalty to Muslims and disavowal of non-Muslims, had fostered division and hatred, contrary to God's desire for love and unity among all people. I saw how the promise of martyrdom and its heavenly rewards had been used to manipulate people into violence, a stark contrast to the self-sacrificial love Jesus demonstrated and taught. The true nature of the jinn was revealed to me, far different from the Islamic understanding. I saw how belief in these beings had often led to fear and superstition rather than trust in God. Jesus showed me how the Islamic practice of slaveholding, including sexual slavery, was not just a product of the times, but was endorsed by the Quran and Muhammad's example. I saw how this contrasted with the radical equality taught by Jesus. I witnessed how the doctrine of taqiyya, permissible lying to protect oneself or Islam, had fostered a culture of deception in many Muslim communities, contrary to God's nature of truth and transparency. The corruption and politicization of the hadith collection process was revealed to me. I saw how many sayings attributed to Muhammad were actually fabricated for political or sectarian purposes centuries after his death. Jesus showed me how the Islamic concept naskh, abrogation, was actually an admission of contradiction within the Quran, and how it had been used to justify a move towards violence and intolerance in Islamic theology. I saw how the Quran's treatment of other religions, particularly its harsh rhetoric against Jews and Christians, had fostered centuries of discrimination and conflict. The true history of Mecca was shown to me, revealing that it was not the ancient center of monotheism that Islamic tradition claimed, but a relatively young city that grew in importance with the rise of Islam. Jesus revealed to me the pagan origins of many Islamic rituals, including the circumambulation of the Kaaba, the throwing of stones during Hajj, and the veneration of the Black Stone. I saw how the Islamic concept of God, despite claims of pure monotheism, still carried elements of pre-Islamic Arab paganism, including the use of the title Allah, which had been used for the chief god of the pagan pantheon. The development of Islamic mysticism, or Sufism, was shown to me. I saw how many Sufi practices and beliefs were influenced by non-Islamic sources, including Christianity, Neoplatonism, and even Buddhism. Jesus showed me how the doctrine of the perfection of the Arabic Quran had hindered translation and understanding for non-Arabic speakers, contrary to God's desire to communicate clearly with all people. I witnessed the true origins of the Sunni-Shia split, seeing how it was rooted more in political power struggles than in sincere disagreements over religious truth. The history of Islamic anti-Semitism was revealed to me, tracing its roots to the Quran and Hadith, and showing its devastating effects throughout history. Jesus showed me how the Islamic concept of dawah, proselytizing, often relied on presenting a sanitized version of Islam, avoiding or downplaying problematic aspects of Islamic doctrine and history. I saw how the doctrine of Islam as the final revelation had closed many Muslims' minds to new truth and hindered critical thinking about their beliefs. The true origins of Islamic dietary laws were shown to me, revealing how many were based on pre-Islamic Arab customs rather than divine commands. Jesus revealed to me how the Islamic understanding of the Bible, as corrupted, was baseless, showing me the wealth of manuscript evidence that confirmed the reliability of the biblical text. I witnessed how the doctrine of Muhammad, as the perfect example for humanity, had often been used to justify actions that were clearly unethical, showing the danger of elevating any human to such a status. The history of Islamic iconoclasm was shown to me, revealing how the destruction of art and cultural heritage sites had been justified by Islamic teachings. Jesus showed me how the concept of the Ummah, global Muslim community, as superior to all other bonds, had often torn families and societies apart. I saw how the Islamic view of Jesus, despite its respect for him as a prophet, ultimately diminished his true nature and the significance of his work. The emotional and psychological impact of believing in a God of pure will, rather than a God of love, was revealed to me, showing how it had shaped Islamic cultures in profound ways. Jesus showed me how the doctrine of eternal conscious torment in hell for unbelievers had presented a skewed view of God's justice and love. I witnessed the lives of Muslims who had sincerely sought God with all their hearts, seeing how Jesus had revealed himself to many of them in dreams and visions. Throughout all of this, Jesus kept reminding me, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. As overwhelming as all this information was, I felt no anger or hatred towards Muslims. Instead, my heart broke for those who, like me, had been sincerely seeking God but had been led astray. Jesus then turned to me and said, Zayn, I am giving you a choice. You can stay here with me now, or you can go back and share what you have seen and learned. Many people need to hear the truth. Will you be my witness? I wanted so badly to stay in that perfect love and peace. The thought of going back to the pain and confusion of earth was hard, but I also felt a new purpose growing in my heart. I wanted others to know the truth that I had learned. I'll go back, I said. Please help me to share your truth with others. Jesus smiled, and his love washed over me again. I will always be with you, he said. Remember what you have seen and heard. Trust in me, and I will guide you. He then showed me a vision of my future. I saw myself sharing my testimony with others, helping them to find the truth about Jesus. But Jesus also warned me that it wouldn't be easy. He showed me that I would face opposition, especially from my family and former Muslim friends. He showed me that I would be called a traitor and a fool, but he also showed me the joy of those who would come to know him through my testimony. Be strong and courageous, Jesus said. I have overcome the world, and in me you too will overcome. As he said this, I felt a new strength fill me. I knew that with Jesus, I could face anything. Before I left, Jesus gave me one last gift. He let me feel for just a moment the full extent of his love for humanity. It was so powerful, so overwhelming, that I thought my soul would burst. I understood then why he had been willing to suffer and die for us. His love was bigger than any sin, any mistake, any rebellion. As I felt myself being pulled back towards earth, I heard Jesus say one last thing. Remember, Zane, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Then everything went dark again. I opened my eyes and found myself back in my body. The harsh fluorescent lights of a hospital room replaced the warm, loving light I had just experienced. I was lying in a bed, hooked up to various machines that beeped steadily. My chest ached, and I felt incredibly weak, but I was alive. A doctor was standing over me, his eyes wide with surprise. "Welcome back," he said, checking my vitals. "We almost lost you there. You had a massive heart attack caused by a rare condition. It's nothing short of a miracle that you survived." I tried to speak, to tell him about what I had seen, but my throat was dry and sore. A nurse noticed my discomfort and offered me some ice chips. After moistening my mouth, I managed to croak out, "How long was I gone?" "Your heart stopped for about 5 minutes," the doctor replied. "We were about to call time of death when you suddenly came back on your own. I've never seen anything like it in all my years of practice." 5 minutes? It had felt like hours, or maybe even days. I had seen and learned so much in what seemed like such a short time. The experience was so vivid, so real. I knew it wasn't just some hallucination caused by lack of oxygen to my brain. My parents came rushing into the room, their faces etched with worry and relief. My mother's eyes were red from crying, and my father looked like he had aged years in a single day. "Alhamdulillah," my mother kept saying, hugging me gently. "Praise be to Allah, you're alive." I wanted to tell them right then about what I had seen, about Jesus and the truth I had learned. But I was too weak, and I knew they wouldn't understand yet. I needed time to process everything myself first. Over the next few days, as I recovered in the hospital, I thought constantly about my experience. Every detail was seared into my memory. The overwhelming love of Jesus, the beauty of heaven, the deep truths I had learned about the flaws in Islamic teachings. It all seemed so clear and real, not like a dream at all. I knew that what I had seen was true, and that my life would never be the same. When I was strong enough, I asked to see Sophia. My parents were reluctant, still believing she was just a classmate, but they finally agreed. When she came to visit, her face lit up with joy at seeing me awake. I asked for some privacy, and once we were alone, I told her everything. Sophia listened with tears in her eyes, holding my hand as I recounted my journey. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "I always prayed that you would come to know the truth, Zane, but I never imagined it would happen like this." God truly works in mysterious ways. Sophia helped me find resources to learn more about Jesus and his teachings. She brought me books, and we had long discussions about what I had experienced. Everything I learned confirmed what I had seen during my near-death experience. I felt like I was finally coming home to a truth I had always known deep inside. When I was released from the hospital, I knew I had to tell my family the truth. It was the hardest conversation I've ever had. We were sitting in our living room, the same room where I had learned to recite the Quran as a child. My parents listened in shocked silence as I told them about my experience and my decision to leave Islam. When I finished, the silence was deafening. Then my father exploded. "How can you abandon your faith?" he shouted, his face red with anger. "After all we've taught you, after all Allah has done for you." My mother was crying, her hands shaking as she clutched her prayer beads. "Please, Zane," she begged. This is just confusion from your illness. Once you're fully recovered, you'll see the truth again. I haven't abandoned faith, I tried to explain, my heart breaking at their pain. I've found the true faith. I've seen Jesus, and I know he is the way, the truth, and the life. My siblings looked at me like I was a stranger. My younger brother, Ahmed, who had always looked up to me, turned away in disgust. My sister, Fatima, burst into tears and ran from the room. The next few weeks were a nightmare. My parents tried everything to change my mind, pleading, arguing, even bringing the imam from our mosque to talk to me. But nothing could shake what I knew to be true. Finally, my father gave me an ultimatum. If you persist in this madness, he said, his voice cold, you are no longer welcome in this house. You will no longer be my son. It was the hardest decision of my life, but I knew I had to choose truth above all else. With a heavy heart, I packed my things and left the only home I had ever known. Sophia and her family took me in, welcoming me with open arms. They gave me a place to stay and supported me as I began my new life. Their kindness was a balm to my wounded heart, a living example of the love I had experienced in my vision. Not everything has been easy since then. I've lost friends who couldn't accept my decision. Some members of the Muslim community have called me a traitor. I've even received threats. But I've also found a new family in my faith community, and I've seen how my story can touch others. I've started a YouTube channel where I share my testimony and what I've learned about the flaws in Islamic teachings. To my surprise, many people have reached out to me, including Muslims who have questions or doubts about their faith. I'm not angry at Muslims. I know they are seeking God, just as I was. But I pray that they will come to know the truth about Jesus, that they will experience his love as I have. As I write this, it's been a year since my near-death experience. Every day I thank God for the second chance he's given me. Not just a second chance at life, but a chance to know the truth and to share it with others. My journey is far from over. There's still so much to learn, so many people to reach. But I know that Jesus is with me every step of the way, just as he promised. And I'm excited to see where he leads me next. If you're reading this and you're unsure about your faith, or if you're curious about Jesus, I encourage you to seek the truth with an open heart. Don't be afraid to ask questions and challenge what you've always believed. The truth can handle scrutiny. And remember, Jesus loves you more than you can possibly imagine. He's waiting for you with open arms, ready to show you a love that will transform your life forever. If Zayn's incredible journey from Islam to faith in Jesus touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of faith and transformation. And don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps us share this life-changing message with people all around the world. Together, we can make a difference, one soul at a time. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today.